So recently, I happily finally reached 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube, and I felt it was time for the customary 1,000 subscribers Q&A special. So I put a community post where you could drop your Qs if you had any. And I didn't get that many Qs, did not get that many questions coming in. Don't know why, although I suppose, possibly if you've read my book here, it's entirely possible that there's just not a whole hell of a lot of ambiguity left. But whatever the cause, didn't get that many questions really, so I kind of anticipate this video being rather brief. But that out of the way, let's get into the questions that I did get. So, Nikki Venable 73 commented and said, I'd be curious where you got your love of reading and how you are able to delve deep into a book and speak so eloquently about it. You do this very well, along with Clifford, referring to Better Than Food, if you know that channel, Stella, referring to It's Too Late to Apologize, if you know that channel, and Leaf by Leaf. First of all, thank you much. That's high honors to be ranked among those other content creators because they're some of the best. I thought you were working in the areas of English literature and or philosophy, but you said once that you were an accountant. That blew me away and surprised me because you seem able to dissect themes and bring up some philosophical nuggets from the books you read, and you do it in a way that isn't highbrow but accessible. Well, thank you again. Yes, I have no actual training in the areas of literature or philosophy, so anything I say just take with a grain of salt because I'm quite the layman. But yes, I'm an accountant. I balance books and do tax returns because although literature and philosophy, I guess, in an amateur capacity at least, are kind of the real passions of my life, they're not really um, the best avenues for making money and putting food on the table. So, for practical purposes, you got to do what you got to do to make that bread. But I will expound upon my history as a reader and how I kind of came to be where I am now. So, my love of reading was spawned from a series of books. These books were The Mistmantle Chronicles by M.I. McAllister. This book right here, which is the first book in that series, Urchin of the Riding Stars, is one of my most treasured possessions. I've had this book since I was 9 years old. Again, this is near and dear to my heart. I will straight cut a hoe if anybody tried to step when it comes to this book because this is truly a treasure to me. But anyway, so the Mistmantle Chronicles are where I got my love of reading. This is where I learned that books could be hella fun. These books, if you don't know what these are, they're very reminiscent of like the Redwall books by Brian Jacques, if you've read any of those. I haven't myself, so I don't really know exactly how close they compare to that. But this is like, I like to say this is like Game of Thrones with anthropomorphic animals without the raunchy sex at least. But it's not afraid to get dark. In fact, these books kind of do get kind of dark for kids' books. There's death in these books, actually quite a bit of death at times, and it deals with some kind of political machinations of these animals on this island. There's I think there's like four species of animals that populate mainly these books, that being squirrels, otters, hedgehogs, and what was it? Moles. Yeah, moles. So anyway, these animals live on this island, and there's lots of scheming and backstabbing, and like it's kind of epic in a way. But I just absolutely adore these books. I think they've recently come back into print. I think you can find them on Amazon now. I don't think you could for some time. And I would highly encourage anyone out there who has children, give these books a look if you want to kind of maybe get your kids interested in reading because oh my goodness, it did it for me. I remember when I got this book. Like I said, I was 9. I just gotten braces. My grill might look decent now, but it was throwing up gang signs at one point back in my younger days. So I had to go get braces, and they used basically like a torque wrench on my mouth. I mean, I was like in agony on the ride back from the orthodontist. I was just giving my mother the stink eye the whole way because I was just in torment. And we passed the Barnes and Noble, and she was like, "Hey, I'll buy you a book if it'll cheer you up." I was like, "Okay, fine." So picked this book up, and this was how the journey began. It really was. The Mistmale Chronicles, just fantastic books. Give them a look if you haven't. They're great to get kids hooked on reading. But then from there, I think that my first exposure, or certainly one of my first exposures to like serious adult fiction, and not like airport kind of books, adult fiction. I mean like literary adult fiction, would be this book right here, Grendel by John Gardner. I think I was like in eighth grade. I tried to read this way too young to read this book, not because there's anything particularly bad in it. It's just that it was so far over my head. I didn't have a clue what this book was talking about. It was weird. It kind of made me uncomfortable and feel strange inside reading it because of just how philosophical it was. But obviously, I went and picked it up later as an adult, and I love this book now. But yeah, this was really my first, or again, one of my first, at least, exposures to adult literary fiction, of books that really have something to say, that really have something to dig into. And yeah, I was not prepared because again, this was way beyond what I was capable of processing at that time. But this is where I started really kind of understanding um, what literature could be, even though I didn't really understand what it, even though I didn't really understand it at the time. But then time went on, and I think I was like a senior in high school when I read what became instantly my favorite book of all time, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And this was truly the watershed moment where I was like, oh shit, like books can do stuff like this. Because even back then I was like, well, first of all, I'd actually read this, I think, much earlier when I was like 10 or so, like a dumbed down, uh, kidified version of the story. Because you see the movies and you're like, hey, this looks interesting, and then it's just completely different from what you were expecting. So I guess, re-encountered this book later on in, I think, my senior year of high school, and it was just, this was takeoff right here, because I was like, oh, this book said some stuff. I think I picked up on a lot of what it said, and it says a lot too. A lot of people don't realize just the political side of Frankenstein. Um, Not because a lot of people think it's about science and stuff, and it kind of is. But also, if you didn't know, where Victor Frankenstein attends college in Ingolstadt, that's also the birthplace of the Illuminati. Not, I mean, the real Illuminati, not the conspiracy theory kind of Illuminati. This book is highly political, actually. If you didn't know that, it's basically almost a political allegory. But anyway, that's beside the point. Anyway, I picked up on a lot in this book, and I was like, this book kind of fed me in a way. Like it really made me think. It still makes me think every time I read this book, and also it made me feel things that I hadn't really felt before, at least from a book. And yeah, this was just the watershed moment. Like I said, this became instantly my favorite book of all time. Still is, likely always will be. And this was the one that showed me that like books really can do stuff. Books can say stuff. That books can be more than just just entertainment. They can really have things to communicate and convey, and can really make you look at things differently. Because after reading Frankenstein, it seemed like colors were a little bit brighter. You know, it's just like you look deeper at things, kind of, or at least I did after reading this. This really changed my life. To some extent, it changed my outlook, and yeah. So Frankenstein was the book that really, you know, solidified my course to readership, I guess. Moving on to the next commenter, Jason Furman. Great channel. Check him out if you haven't. He's had me on a couple times actually. So he had a few questions. What was the first book that made reading an obsession? And that would be The Mistmantle Chronicles. Still love these books. Two, is there anyone in your life that inspired you to get into reading and or writing? There's a couple of people. My mother, I guess, really growing up, I did not really grow up in the most literary household, um, but my mother was the only one really in my life that actually read, and she mainly just read like John Grisham, Nora Roberts, and Frank Peretti. Had several Frank Peretti books lying around the house growing up. But other than that, it was basically just the Bible, and that was it. Um, so she really, because I'd see her reading and stuff, and that kind of kind of inclined me a little bit towards books, I guess. But also, I had an English teacher in high school, Mr. Harvey, great teacher, one of the greatest I've ever had. He was really passionate about what he taught and making sure kids got it. It wasn't just, you know, read this passage, here's a pop quiz, you pass, you fail, whatever. He was really into trying to convey to the kids like why this was important, why Shakespeare was important, why Animal Farm is an important book, and really what it says. So, and also, I believe he actually wrote some stuff in his uh, personal time. I don't know. I've never read it, but I think he was also kind of an amateur writer. So, yeah, Mr. Harvey, if you're out there, you had one success in your class at least because here we are. And then question number 3: what is your reading routine like? I just read in the evenings basically. Get off work at 5, about 6 to 10, read. I feel like that's kind of an underwhelming answer, but that's pretty much it. On the weekends, I can really put some serious pages down. As far as like what I try to read regularly, my goal is usually with a book of decent size to do about 50 pages per day. So in 4 days, you can read about 200 pages. But then on the weekends, when I have more time, I try to get like 100 pages a day. So reading at a pretty good rate, I think. And also, I try to do mainly one book per week. So that's about 52 books in a year. Um, yeah, so that's my reading routine. That's again, that may sound underwhelming, but that's my reading routine. I do not read electronically, and I don't have a Kindle, and I don't use audiobooks either. I'm very much a physical book kind of guy. Not a huge fan of audiobooks because I don't really feel like I'm doing the work with those so much. And that's not throwing shade by any means at people who use audiobooks. I'm just saying that for me, I like to have the sense of progress of the pages transferring from one hand to the other as you read, one side to the other. Um, yeah, so that's my reading routine, and that's the extent of the questions. So yeah, thanks to everyone who subscribed, and thanks to those who dropped some questions. And if anyone comes across this video and you have any more questions, feel free to you can just drop them in the comments, and if I can answer them, I will. And yeah, so made it to 1,000 subscribers, and here's to thousands more, I hope. So, as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.